Neon Genesis Evangelion is Greek, and what it literally means is new first book gospel. So, first book of the new gospel. What that means is not that it's a religious text per se, although there are a lot of religious references in there, but I think that what Anno and Gainax were attempting to convey was the idea that this is serving the purpose of a gospel, or to use the works of Joseph Campbell as a reference, it's a cultural myth that is designed to guide us down a specific path. In this case, what we're looking at is what Campbell defines as the classic hero myth, in which a protagonist is pulled from a safe, secure environment and forced to go through a series of tragedies and triumphs that forces him to develop into a final being who is complete, who is whole. And Eva follows that pattern almost exactly. We begin with a character who is very incomplete and moves steadily in a orchestrated series of progressions towards finding his placement both as a personal being and within society. And what Eva is really about, when you get right down to it, is it's finding that complement that none of us actually have. It's about finding the rest of us that's out there.
Well, art is really to explore the human condition, and the human condition inevitably is suffering. We use art to deal with the complexities of life, and many of these complexities arrive from childhood, becoming an adult. And what we have in Evangelion is a story of several 14-year-olds who are basically growing up, and their harsh childish realities are becoming harsh adult realities, their inequities, excuse me. And it's being represented with robots, the end of the world, and technology as an analogy to what's going on in their lives. Keep in mind, Shinji and Asuka basically learned to dance. Shinji is forced to accept other people's friendship through conflict with the fourth angel, the second we see. He basically grows in his relationships with Suzuhara, etc. So we see that most of the show is basically the growth of Shinji as an individual, just as any child would grow up, any 14-year-old would go, anything the 14-year-old would go through, except kind of pushed to the ultimate, where his choices are the choices that will guide the rest of humanity, the choices that will save the world or let it die. And this is how an egocentric 14-year-old would feel. They don't understand the entire world, and they only understand their small bit.
The first thing to remember is that the entire series of Eva, up to the last 2 episodes, is actually a flashback or a dream or something to that effect. It's all actually taking place in Shinji's mind. Now, are these events that really happened, that he's going over and over again? Is this some kind of dream analog that he's come up with to represent his situation? We don't know, and ultimately it's really not important to understanding the show to know which it is. Perhaps all the world is indeed a stage, and we're just players, which is, of course, the analogy in the last 2 episodes. What is important is that Shinji is sitting there mentally reviewing all of the data that's been input to him at this point in time, because there is going to come a point, although he is not consciously aware of it at first, that where he is going to have to make certain decisions and come to certain realizations. And the deadline for this is becoming whole with those around him, or simply not, in which case the consequences are obviously rather dire. And what he's going through changes in your perspective. If you watch Eva all the way through once and then go back and watch it again, this is one of the trickiest things in doing the English language version. So many of the scenes, so many of the specific lines have double meanings. First time through, they seem to mean one thing. With the knowledge that you have getting through the later episodes, going back and watching those earlier episodes, suddenly, oh, that didn't mean what I thought it did. We took the logical assumption, but that wasn't what was actually necessarily going on. But when you're watching Eva for the first time, you are, like Shinji, basically a tabula rasa, a blank slate upon which all of this information is being imprinted.
We have Shinji basically starting as a blank slate. Nothing defines him. His father brings him to N.E.R.V, and his father says, grow up, be a man, accept your responsibilities. You may suffer, but that's part of life. Deal with it, or go away. And go away in this case is kind of a thing saying, well, go kind of do a kind of an introverted suicide type thing in a psychological sort of way. Just become non-existent in the world. Because these are, excuse me, become non-existent in the world. He has to go through this difficult process of growing up, and the thing that inevitably gets Shinji to start this journey is he sees a damsel in distress. Granted, we now know much more about Rei than we saw in the first episode. Basically, he saw the female form, and this, like many other stories, is the inciting incident that brings Shinji inevitably into the story and gets him to start acting. And he realizes that there is a little bit more outside of his shell, but he's still very afraid of what's there.
Fear. Fear is ultimately the act of the living being attempting to preserve itself. Fear is there because if we do not fear, we do not resist that which could destroy us. Again, referencing Campbell. Campbell, in The Power of Myth, references a wonderful story in which the deity being discussed basically comes into being. And the first words are, I am. And the second words to come, I am afraid. This is where Shinji is. Shinji is in a situation where he must develop, and if he cannot do it on his own, something must be done to force him to develop. In the context of Eva, his levels that he has to pass, the things he needs to accept, are represented by the angels. They are the instruments by which he can achieve the goal of becoming truly human, hence the Human Instrumentality Project.
Look at it as the reluctant messiah that the issue Shinji's dealing with at the moment. Shinji's basically told, go out, suffer, save the world. And he doesn't want to. And look at the way Seychelles is designed. Spurs coming from the palms of their hands. Stigmata, the cross-shaped explosions. Basically, a Christ-like figure, the giving back the sins of the world, in a way. And this is how Shinji feels. So Shinji is basically confronting his issue at the moment. It's the bit he needs to outgrow to get closer to becoming a man.